So I saw that Paul David's video recently of all these amazing guitar players soloing over this track. And whenever I hear these solos and just hear these guitar players hit these sweet notes, I just always wonder, man, why does that sound so good? And part of it is them hitting the chord changes, but the other really big part is very nice chord changes. And that's what I love about this track. It's got all those sweet little moments that just take you slightly outside of the key signature. So I want to look at what the chords are in this chord progression and figure out how to solo over it and how to sound really nice over it. And it's a really great way to challenge yourself on how to hit the changes. So there's two chord progressions, both in the key of A minor. And this first one starts off with a basic A minor chord descending with the bass note. So it goes from A to A minor over G sharp to A minor over G. And that's a common movement, but it just sounds so beautiful. And then we go over to D with the F sharp in the bass. So we're continuing just to move that bass note down, and then to F major, then to F minor, resolving to C, then to E major. Now that's all the chords in this section, and as you could tell, it's not exactly in the key of A minor. There's slight moments where we take you kind of outside or experience different modes. So sure, you could solo in the key of A minor and it's going to sound pretty good, but to know exactly what notes to hit and when to kind of switch out of these modes, that's when it's going to sound really tight and really dope. So let's check this out. Now the first three chords, A minor over G sharp, and A minor over G, we could play just A minor. It's going to sound great, just a regular A minor scale. But when it comes to hitting the changes, as much as you want to think about what notes to hit, you also want to think about what notes not to hit. So if I were to analyze these first three chords, I could play that full A minor scale. And sure, that doesn't line up with the A minor over G sharp. But if I wanted to find a scale that exactly worked with it, like A harmonic minor, which would include that G sharp, it just sounds too outside, a little bit too much of something. So I don't really want to do that. I don't think it would sound very nice. So what you really want to do is just avoid that G right there. So if I find my pattern and I know that this is a G and this is a G, when I'm going through that quick little change, it's just 2 beats. We don't need to change a whole scale over it. For just those 2 beats, I could avoid that G, or even just make sure I don't land on it. That's the start right there, and it's going to sound nice. And boom, I got those first 3 chords sounding great. Now for this next chord, D over F sharp, that's a D major chord. And if we were to analyze all the chords in the key of A minor, the 4 chord D is naturally a minor chord. So what does that mean with this A minor scale? Well, it means we take the minor third of D, F, and we raise it up to F sharp, which is the major third, making that D major. Now when we apply that to the scale, all of a sudden we still have an A minor scale, but it becomes a mode. It becomes the A Dorian mode. It's all the regular notes of the A minor scale, but with that F raised to F sharp, making it Dorian. So if we want to really make that chord shine, I could play the A Dorian mode, or I could simply just highlight that F sharp, that note right there, and know where to find it around the key, and it's going to sound really tight. Now, if you're not familiar with any of these scales, be sure to download the study packet at patreon.com/nastysoul. Now, one thing you want to think about when you have the opportunity to switch between modes is you don't really have to. So if we look at just the A minor pentatonic scale, it's not really a mode. It's kind of like above modes, right? If we think about what defines the Aeolian, the original minor scale, and the Dorian mode, it's at F and F sharp. Neither of those notes are in the pentatonic. So over all those chords, I could just play the pentatonics and it's going to sound great. Or I could even play the pentatonics and again, single out that F sharp, know where that F sharp is, and when that D major comes, hit it right there and it's going to sound really tight. So as we're moving on, we go to this F major chord, and that's simply in the natural minor key. That's great. We're just going to make sure if we do switch over to Dorian, we got to go back to Aeolian and make sure that we hit that F, because we certainly don't want to hit an F sharp over an F major chord. Okay, sweet. So now this is where it gets very nice and interesting. I love this part right here. We got an F minor chord. And what's happening there, it's almost like we're temporarily moving to the key of C major, and that F minor is going to resolve us to C major. But it's a modal interchange resolve, right? So we're actually kind of in C minor right there. And it's also kind of funny too, because we're in the key of A minor, right? We're in the key of A minor, but we have this moment there. So we don't actually want to play the C minor scale. That'll sound kind of funny. We really just want to single out, again, that one note that makes a difference. So when we go from F major to F minor, that one note is A to A flat. So A would be the major third of F, and A flat would be the minor third. Now when it comes to soloing in this position right here, I have my A, and then there's my A flat. So I could think about it like the same thing. All I have to do is play the A minor scale, and when that chord comes, when it goes to F minor, try and single out that one note. All these other notes kind of work fine. You know, it's totally great. And you want to say consistent in the key when you're soloing. It's going to sound nice. You don't want to go to a completely different key for that one chord especially. But if you play that one note, it's going to sound really, really nice. So we could single out this A flat right here, or even this one right here, right? And that's going to bring us over to C, which again, right back to our normal natural minor scale. And then this very last part, our last little turnaround, E major, that's another moment where we're slightly outside of the natural minor key. E major would make it A harmonic minor. Now, this is the time where we want to get a little bit more outside. When we have a 5 chord, a strong, dominant 5 chord, especially a turnaround at the end of a chord progression or a phrase, that is a beautiful moment to really go outside and play something interesting. So in this instance, we could play the A harmonic minor scale. And if you don't know it, be sure to check out the study packet. There's exercises and all kinds of things to make sure that you know all these scales and these modes in case you don't. So when we're hitting this E major chord, we can play any nice lick that's going to bring out that harmonic minor sound. And it's just going to sound really, really nice and just appropriate for the time. Now, equally as important as knowing which scales to use when the chords take us outside of the key, when it comes to hitting the changes, it really comes down to knowing the chord tones. And how you discover the chord tones of every single chord is knowing the triads all across the neck. That's the start. Because every chord, its core idea is 3 notes. It's a triad, right? And then we get to a 7th chord, and that's 1 extra note, and beyond that. But everything about a chord, the foundation of it is the triad. So if I just know my triads across the neck, I'm going to really have a better time at knowing where the chord tones are, and my ability to hit those changes increases. So when I have an A minor chord, I want to know that the A minor triad goes here, here, and here. So I want to be able to do that for every single chord. And especially when I get chords that get us outside of the key, right? Like that F minor chord. I know that my F minor triad is here, here, and here. So now all of a sudden when I'm soloing, I can just play my A minor stuff, my A minor licks, my A minor scale, whatever, A minor pentatonics. And then when that F minor hits, I just think about that triad right here. And I can be like, and then resolve it back around or whatever. And that's a really interesting way. And that's really going to bring out the changes because you're literally playing the chord or playing the notes in the chord. And that's just going to sound really nice, especially when those chords take us outside of the key. Now, if you don't know your triads very well, I strongly suggest finding all of them for this entire chord progression. It's a great exercise. And even start simple with just these middle 3 strings, the D, G, and B, like I did earlier, right there for A minor. Now, the ultimate challenge to really help these sink in is to play them with a metronome. And then not only play them with a metronome, but play them with the track and hit the changes just with the triads going between it. And just for an example, I'm going to show you that right now. Now the second part of the chord progression is much simpler. It's simply basically all in the key of A minor. We go from F major to G major, E minor, and A minor. Now it does that twice, but the fun and interesting part is the third time through, we go F, G, and A major. Now when we hit that A major chord, we're obviously no longer in the key of A minor. So we can play anything in the key of A major and it's going to sound great. And definitely, like, if we stick with the pentatonics and play some kind of pentatonic thing, it's especially going to sound really nice. And if you want to think about a way to bring out that majory sound, remember the difference between major and minor is the third. So if we look at A minor right here, you can even follow along with these chords and start to visualize exactly how it works, how these harmonies work. So I have my A minor right here. Let's do it maybe like this. That's my C right there on the G string. So I raise that to C sharp, and that becomes A major. So if I really wanted to make that transition shine and that harmonic modulation, I suppose, really come out, I would go from C to C sharp, and I'd highlight that C sharp. I'd find my C sharps. And of course, again, a way to really start to see where those C sharps are and really understand where those chord tones are the triads, okay? So here's my A major triad, A major triad, A major triad. So on top of getting familiar with all the shapes and everywhere, you want to start to familiarize yourself with where the actual chord tones are, the 1, the 3, and the 5. And you want to know that the 1 is the root note, A. The third makes it major or minor, C or C sharp. And then the fifth is, it's just the fifth. It's just an extra little something we add to the chord. It's not the most important, but it's part of the chord. So especially the third, that's really so much of the character of the chord. So when I'm looking at my triads, I want to know that that's the third, either major or minor. And then for this triad, here's a third down here. That's major, here's minor. And then right over here, the third is now on the B string. Major, and we bring that down. So if you're not super comfortable with understanding these theoretical concepts, all these things right here are going to help out a lot. And as long as you're doing these exercises mindfully and thinking about what you're doing and trying to understand what these notes are, that's everything. Don't ever mindlessly do an exercise. Always be thinking about it and try and figure out what's going on, and keep reminding yourself, oh yeah, that's this triad, that's this triad, those are these notes in this chord. Keep thinking about this stuff and it's going to sink in much quicker. So yeah, I love this chord progression, and everything about it is just the ultimate wonderful challenge to work on hitting the changes and just figuring out all these notes and making it sound real nice. So be sure to download the study packet that I have to learn all the scales and triads and various exercises to help just get all the core ideas down as you're trying to figure out the solo. And I highly encourage just playing along with it and man, just trying to hit those changes and using all these ideas. And the final step is just to make it sound nice, right? When you have all these ideas, you're gonna suss them out, you're gonna try and figure out, try and just hit the right note. But the final step is doing it until you could finally make it sound nice and fluid and nice. So remember, if you go to patreon.com/nastysoul, not only will you get the tabs for this and all previous lessons, but you get access to all my awesome courses. If you're trying to learn funk or like Tom Misch style rhythm guitar, or especially soloing, check out all these courses. I highly encourage it. Until then, keep jamming and stay nasty.